One camera rolling. Welcome, Liz. I am so happy and so honored to have you here at the Centro de Poder interview to the experts. And I will say about you that you're the director of core awareness and you're a movement researcher. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is your background and how did you get in contact with this muscle and yeah, like what was the aha moment, like, oh, this is a psoas? What was like the trigger that unfolded all the work that you have done that I am very fan of?
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me. Um, yes, I'm the author of the Psoas book, which I wrote in the 1980s for my students. It was a little manual and then became a book. Core Awareness, Enhancing Yoga, Pilates, Exercise, and Dance. My newest book, Stalking Wild Psoas, Embodying Your Core Intelligence. And then I have several CDs and I've co-authored books like Maiden Mother Crone, Our Pleasure Playlist. So I've been in this field for about 45 years, and I'm a conceptual artist. I'm not a therapist or healer. And I was the first woman at the Boston Museum School of Fine Arts to enter the sculpture department, not as doing form, but as doing process of doing life, and shaping is a process, not something that's static and form. So in doing that, I have a history of scoliosis and a lot of back pain, but I didn't really think about that changing. I just was interested in the creative process. But in doing that, I decided to do some movement work because I had a moment where I felt really touched by how movement changes our perception. It changes the way we understand the world. And I was really intrigued. So I came from curiosity to explore, and I asked around people. I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts at the time, and I asked people, and they told me, someone told me about Bob Cooley. And Bob Cooley is still around. He wrote a book called The Genius of Flexibility. And at that moment in time, he was focused on the psoas. So he was recognizing as a dancer that all movement, all injuries are shaped by the very core of your being. Like all movement and anything that happens, it all comes from the center core of your being. So he had tracked it back to this tissue he called psoas as being kind of the root of a lot of disruption and so we spent a lot of time in what was called constructive rest, which is a term coined by Lulu Schweigart and Mabel Todd in the 1930s, I think. Somatic educators who recognize that this instinctive position on your back, knees up, feet on the floor, is a powerful exploration for grounding, what I call landing and locating, being able to actually show up here on Earth. And so that's how I started my work.
That was your beginning. It's so interesting that you come from sculpture, and as I understand, you became focused on the processes, or not as a fixed thing. So now I am having like an epiphany, and it came to my mind the concept of Nietzsche of bodily becoming. So it's not a fixed thing, but a living process, and also the concept of posture seen by Moshe Feldenkrais, that he said that we didn't have a posture but an acture, that our sort of position was not a fixed thing but a continuous doing. And I have read a lot of your work, and you say that the psoas, it's not only a muscle, but it's also like a sensory organ, like an awareness organ. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it's a revolutionary view that I think it's groundbreaking in our concepts of anatomy and science as a very divisive thing, but it has a lot of sense experientially, at least for me. I had a psoas injury 4 years ago. I had some fibers, some upper part detached from my lumbar spine, and then I got in contact with your work. Yeah, it was very tough because the solution was to drill my vertebra and to put a wire from the muscle. So yeah, so yeah, tough. So that was an alternative, and that is still the alternative. And I choose like to research my body and to see if I could build myself, the rest of myself, enough so I could support that part of my detached core. So literally, I have a piece of steak, like just of psoas steak hanging, but I am actually doing pretty fine, and I have in sort of a way mastered like my self organization. And your work has been really like revealing to me and healing to me. So I testify that it is a muscle, and it is the core, and it is so also like a center of will or of awareness. I don't know how to describe it, but I would like you to share a little bit more about that, like the mind body connection center, feeling, sensing, etc.
Well, to go there, you have to change the paradigm.
Yes.
As long as you stay in the biomechanical paradigm, which is the allopathic, scientific, not scientific actually, but a particular paradigm within allopathic medicine, then you see the body in mechanical ways.
Yes.
And you see it as an object.
Yes.
And as long as you're in that paradigm, you can't understand Psoas. The context of Psoas isn't there. The context of Psoas is within the scientific perspective of biology, physics, and specifically embryology.
Yes.
So if people want to understand psoas, they cannot stay as looking at it as a muscle. The only reason why it's defined as a muscle is because somebody cut up a dead cadaver
Yes.
and chose to call it a muscle. If you talk to a chef, if you talk to a butcher, he will tell you that psoas is nothing like any other tissue of the body.
Yes.
So I've had the opportunity to have, Boston butchers in my workshop. So
Yes.
we talk psoas. So psoas is filet mignon. It's the juiciest cut of meat we eat in an animal. We do it because it's most tender, it's juicy, it's succulent, it doesn't have fibers that move in a particular direction, it's orbital and it's global. So to me, it's not a muscle. Can it be used as a muscle? Yes, but it is not a muscle, and it does not hold up your spine. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with having part of your psoas torn, except that's an injury to the psoas itself.
Yes.
But the communication of psoas is one of being an organ of perception, like your tongue.
Yeah.
So as an organ of perception, if you think of it more in that terms, then you stop trying to fix it, do something, make it better, make it stronger, all the things you do when you think about muscles, or anyone thinks about muscles.
Yes.
So one is the paradigm shift. The paradigm shift is, and the place I do the paradigm shift the most is in my newest book, because it's 9 essays, and its intention is to change your language of body, or not your personally, but everybody's language of body. So we stop looking at body as structure. We don't have a spinal column. We don't have a vaginal floor. We don't have, pelvic floor. We don't have vaginal walls. We don't have roofs to our mouth. We don't have, we are not an object.
Yes.
We are a living, organic process.
Yes.
So we have to find a language that is organic, that is about life itself. Your spine is a living river.
Yes.
It's a caterpillar. It responds as a caterpillar. So when you're poked, you will go into a response of protection. That is the primal psoas. That is its expression. Is both to ward off, to get bigger, to get smaller. It's all about survival. It's all about flourishing. So full body orgasm is part of the expression of the psoas. A wave motion like a current.
Yes.
So it's all about finding a languaging that is in fact science, but is not found in the mechanical perspective or paradigm
Older,
of science.
older paradigm. This is so
Yeah.
fascinating. Thank you so much, Liz. Can you give us a taste of how to experience the psoas for our audience, like a movement, an
Well,
image?
yeah, I can. I can say that psoas is something very elusive. The more you sense your psoas, the more it's being engaged or I call recruited as
Okay.
something else.
Yes. Yes.
So if you're a dancer and you've learned to lift, you're pulling up with your own psoas.
Okay.
You're using your kidney energy, your adrenal,
Yes.
to actually perform.
Yes.
And what you said about Feldenkrais, Jupp van der Waal, the embryologist, would say the same thing, that the embryo performs gestures. It rises up against falling apart. And so there's expression in the organism. And when we understand expression rather than shape, then we see the living process in its process, and we're moving with it rather than correcting it. So it's about connection rather than correcting it. The whole being. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, biomechanics doesn't have a soul. Where's the soul in biomechanics? Where is emotions? There, you go to a psychologist to talk about emotions. It's not in the paradigm. But in the embryological paradigm, it's all there because you are one living organism expressing itself. So the way to sense psoas, if people get focused on a thing, that is the mechanical model. That is the colonized mind.
Yes.
That's it. You can't do it that way. You can't use the same colonized ways that shaped your issue to dissolve your issue.
Yes.
You have to let go of that. So part of the letting go is noticing. What do you notice? Does your organism want to curl? Does it want to get, does it arc? What people will do when a body arcs is try to pull the ribs down and tighten the abdominals and try to force you out of that expression, because that's not correct behavior. That's not correct expression. So we have a model of what it is to be human that is a colonized idea, especially in a white body, of what correct posture is. If we're looking at process, we're curious about what are we feeling, what are we sensing, where does our awareness go, what does our attention focus on. The psoas is, to focus in on it, is the upper psoas has a nerve innervation, which is in the solar plexus.
Yes.
Okay. So that area has one quality to it. There's a second nerve innervation, the lower psoas.
Yes.
What we want is the feeling of wholeness.
Yes.
So we want to feel the whole of our psoas. You can't do that by stretching, pulling, getting in a posture, manipulating it. That's all the mechanical model.
Yeah.
You have to open up to the feeling quality, and then you come to something very elusive. When psoas is healthy, it's like holding a cloud in your attention, in your awareness. Like you can't really kind of get a feeling of it, right? It's hard to have a sense of substance of a cloud. You know it's there, but it's very vague. That's psoas. Healthy psoas is very vague. It's very elusive. It's very obscure. It's a kind of intuitive feeling. It's a kind of connection that is not something you get your hands on, even though people try, but that's abusive to the psoas. So it's about accessing this core intelligence. So I call it the messenger of the midline.
Yes.
And that means that in embryology, we have an axis. We have a north and south pole that is me, that no one else has, the same as you have one. And that is what your whole organism is blossoming out of. And that's a biointelligence, though, that accesses the universe. It accesses all intelligence. It accesses all molecular, cellular memory. It's an intelligence that you have direct access to, that's within the depths of your own being. In many fields, we call that intuition. We call that awareness. We call that consciousness. So as we become more curious, we start to notice, and yes, you can differentiate psoas from bone, or psoas from abdominals or organs, but that's a sensory process that people have to get. What I do urge people to do is spend some time in constructive rest. I think it's one of the most underrated but potential positions available to us, which is to get on the floor, not as a correction, but as a landing. Get your bones literally on the earth, preferably, but at least on a wood floor, or some floor that's really connected to earth, and just let yourself land. Put the alignment with your feet aligned with the hip sockets, which are on the front of your body, the side bones that we often think of as our hips. So we're not posturing in a defensive mode, we're just available.
Yes.
And we start to watch how our body begins to land. And as it lands, bones will begin to shift, tissue will begin to move, organs will begin to shift. And that is the most direct way to access your psoas, because gravity releases what I call extraneous neurological tension. So it's an experience in the moment. It's anything that you haven't kind of resolved can kind of dissolve in that position. And then you just show up in time and space. And when you show up in time and space, your psoas is very happy, because that's one of its major messages, is that you can't land and locate. A person is disoriented in some way.
Yes.
Something is disrupted. And what usually is disrupted is our proprioception, the connection to the bone.
Yes.
So if you have good perception, your psoas can not only heal, it can regrow. You need to understand that. I worked with a man who tore his psoas from his lesser trochanter. Oof. And he literally, he was a rugby player, and he was young. He was an Irishman, and he pulled it when he was like 17 or 18, and it literally snapped. People heard it throughout the stadium. He fell on the floor, and he couldn't move. He had to be carried out. And I said, so what did they do? And he said, they put me in constructive rest for about 6 months. Now, maybe they taped it. Maybe, I don't know if he had any, actually, I never asked him if they operated on him. But it grew back. I work with people whose psoas are cut in half because they have surgeries where they don't care about the psoas, so they just get it out of the way and cut it in half. Or they slash it in hip socket. In hip socket surgeries, because they're releasing it. So they use it as this, they fillet it. So if yours was torn, which, sometime you have to tell me how that happened, then you're looking at the piece that's so important, which is lushing, juicifying. It's juicifying. It's juicifying. You got to juicify your psoas. So connective tissue work where you're hydrating in slow, soft, responsive movements is what is so essential for the psoas, is to recreate that filet mignon, to recreate the hydrated psoas. It is essential for everyone's health to have a juicy psoas. Not only is it for your survival, but it's literally for your health. And I had a orthopedic surgeon interview me recently who does those kind of surgeries like you were suggested to. Who's in there trying to help fix somebody on their spine. And he's noticing how dry the psoas is. And he's telling me that it compresses nerves, it interrupts organ functioning, it changes the fluid field around the organs by creating a more acidic condition. So he confirmed what I intuitively know, because I don't work in that field, that the hydration of psoas and spine, creating a spine that's more like a river than a column, provides the restorative capacity of your own organism to heal.
Wonderful. Your words are so precious to me. I am starting to feel expansive and to try to synthesize something so complex and delicious. It came to me the feeling that accessing the Psoas it is not about making it happen or following a step by step protocol, but more about a listening process, of letting it happen, of an allowing and learning from what is already there and supporting
Yes.
that. That is my feeling, that working with the Psoas is creating an invitation for oneself in a way.
Yes.
Yeah,
To
to
access this deep core that you are. Yeah,
yeah.
to access the deepness, the soulfulness of who you are as an organism, as a being here on Earth.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and an
Yes.
opening way for the truest expression of yourself, which is in a way it's also a discipline, but it is on another, beyond a paradigm shift. It's like working with another cognitive domain that is not only
Yes.
like the discursive thinking, but a richer language of experience and being,
Yes.
and acknowledging oneself as a process and becoming through that process. So I take this word of invitation, and I would like you to tell us how can our audience reach you? How can they learn more about the Psoas? As I invite them to know more about your work and know more about themselves and this beautiful thing that is the experience of the Psoas and the core and the awareness of it.
Yes. Thank you. Well, people can go to my website, Core Awareness.
Yes.
That's pretty simple to remember. So
Yes.
www.coreawareness.com. And there you'll find a rich, there's a rich sourcing of information in all different kinds of capacities. By just scrolling down to the bottom of the homepage, you'll find educational resources. And what that means is I have interviews like we're doing. I have interviews where I'm interviewing people like Jaap Vanderbilt, the embryologist. So we're discussing this expression of how the embryo is within you and it's constantly unfolding. It doesn't go away.
Yes.
You are the embryo. That we're not made up of cells, where we utilize cells to become. So it's a rich conversation with different people like that who understand, or we dialogue about this new understanding of ourselves as not an object, but a process. There's videos of me working in water to hydrate Psoas, and on a chair and on the floor and in different ways, very simple, because it's not a complex thing. It's not a skill. Yes. It takes no skill level, which I feel very good about. It takes no skill level to have a functional Psoas. It takes what you're talking about, awareness, a listening, a willingness, and allowing, a capacity to nourish the organism. And so the nourishment of the whole organism is more like when you're looking at how could I support a flower blossoming or a tree becoming its fullness, and if we're in a pot, if we're a 90-foot redwood tree and we're growing in a pot, we don't know we're a 90-foot redwood tree until we land in the earth, and then all of a sudden our capacity really shows up. So for me, as a conceptual artist, I've only been interested in how do we really blossom. And blossoming happens in the mammalian world, in the mammal world, through play. Yes. Through exploration, through curiosity. So it's the play that actually lets us keep expressing ourselves in diverse and multiplicities of, ways that gives us this richness to who we are. And I call it a culture. It's a culturing, like wine. And the ability and cheese, and, the nuance of tasting something that isn't just a red or white wine, but is, something where you actually can taste the earth or what that plant was influenced by or touched by or fell in love with, or, like how that's what we're doing. Yes. And so core awareness is a rich source of sourcing this deepness within ourselves. And then my workshops are on, my schedule for 2020 is limited yet because I haven't put it up. But, I'll be in Europe, for example, this fall, in November.
Yes.
And so there's different ways to come into contact with me. And there's an online course that's available where I actually work with people and make recommendations like how you would work to heal, and things you could do that might support that healing of your psoas and regrowing of that tissue.
Regrowing of that tissue.
So start imagining that regrowing. Yeah, that reconnection and that expression of tissue can keep exploring itself, because our cells aren't, we just have to look at change as being something that is not, it can't not happen.
Yes.
Okay? Your cells are always dissolving and reappearing. So we have to start looking at, well, what holds something in a matrix of disease or dysfunction? Is something interrupting with an incredibly intelligent organism? The intelligence of the organism is what I'm curious about.
Yes.
Is while I'm accessing this much, much deeper, broader wealth of support that is life itself.
Yes. I want to add a little thing that now I came into realization when you say about play and that we are always changing. Cells are fading away and we have new cells. And at the same time, that is the edge of survival, creativity, because when you're creating, you don't know what will come out. And at the same time, anytime you're in a challenge, or even if it's not a challenge, it is something that has to do with survival, with the change of a state and stepping into the unknown. But it's very different, like to curl up because you are afraid of the unknown, that when you're actually playing with the unknown and unfolding and creating. Yeah. Yes. Wonderful.
Yes. And part of that process is infolding. So the curling up, that impression of curling up, is actually a place to go. There's a deep connection to the organism's capacity to return.
Yes.
To allow it to unfold.
Yes.
So it's a wave. It's curling in to unfold. So I say collapse, fall into yourself, dissolve, like consciously do it as a expression, or you could call it a performance, you could call it a gesture. Intentionally going there brings you into rich territory to allow you to unfold.
Wonderful.
It's an incredible way. And sometimes for some people, it's that they have to go the other way. They have to really expand into that arc, which is that those ribs going up. They're in the scream. They're in the warding off. That is also a survival response. That's part of the Psoas. So Psoas is all about survival, but thriving and flourishing is within that too. They're not separate. They're the same thing. Yeah, it's all the same thing that's going on in the organism, and it knows how to do that. So what I always look for is not how to do it right, but what is interfering with a process that's so incredibly intelligent.
Yes.
What am I doing that's interrupting? It could be as simple as the shoe that I'm wearing, or the office chair I sit on, or the car I drive in. It can be ergonomic that interrupts movement. But it can also be this unwillingness to the defenses, the capacity of the freeze that's in the organism. And freeze, you can't release trauma. You nourish the organism so it can dissolve what it knows and assimilate it and digest it and then allow it to start flourishing again. You can't rip something out of the system as if that's going to fix it. It's a living process. So reading things about biodynamic, building a compost pile. Those are ways to learn what I'm talking about. Getting in nature, putting your hands in dirt, knowing that your bacteria in your gut has more bacteria in your gut than you have human cells.
Yes, symbiosis is wonderful.
Who am I then? I am the environment. I am the ecosystem. I'm not separate from it. I am it. This is it. And I'm living it. And I get to experience it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. That's pretty playful.
Interconnectedness and the allowing of the inner organic process for this growth and all unfolding. This is so wonderful. This could be a never-ending interview for me, and I could continue talking and asking more questions. I am so happy and really so honored, Liz. Thank you for your generous time, and I hope we eventually meet with another interview or at another workshops. And in the meantime, I invite our audience to reach you. Do you have a Facebook page or something as well?
I do. I have a Facebook page that's both Liz Koch,
Liz
Koch, so Liz Koch, and also core awareness.
Core awareness.
So there's two. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Liz. Take care and have a wonderful, blossoming, expansive day. And a happy Psoas as well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.